Today, we're going to talk about the importance of a content marketing strategy for your business. My name is Lorraine Ball, and I own a company called Roundpeg. We are a digital marketing firm focused on helping businesses develop and leverage the content they're creating to grow their business. So what is content marketing? Well, if you're looking for a classic textbook description, it is a strategic marketing approach designed to attract and retain a clearly defined audience. It's focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to ultimately drive customer action. Now, that's a lot of words, and I think sometimes it's easy to lose the really important information when it's buried in a paragraph like this. So I'm going to make it easy for you. Content marketing is strategic, clearly defined audience, creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent customer action. That's really what's important, and those are the things we're going to talk about today. Because like any marketing activity for a small business, it is ultimately about the customer action. Small business marketing is about results. It's nice if you build brand awareness, but really when you're spending money on marketing, what you're trying to do is get customers to click, to pick up the phone, to talk to you, to take an action. And many times those actions and those results are not necessarily the sales themselves, but the first steps, the clicks and the downloads, the visits to your location, a reservation or appointment, or simply a phone call that is a first step on the process to generating revenue, or if you're a nonprofit, donations. And content marketing feeds those results. It gives you something you can use to nudge those prospective customers through your sales funnel. Why focus on content? The numbers are staggering. 57% of purchase decisions are made before a customer ever talks to a supplier. So your customers are making decisions about whether they're going to or not going to work with you. And how do you help convince them that you're the right choice? That's where your content comes in. And if you're not convinced yet, by 2020, 85% of people will manage relationships with an enterprise without interacting with a human being. So even if you're not there today, your customers are going to be expecting you to get there pretty soon. And so today we're going to talk about content. We're going to talk about different kinds of content. We're going to talk about strategy. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about your audience, because content is really not about you as much as it is about what your audience is looking for. What are the questions they have about your product, your service, and you? And in order to figure out the questions you need to be answering, you need to be thinking about who your customers are. And whether you are in a business-to-business or a business-to-consumer market, think about your customers as individuals. Build what's called a persona, a profile of your typical customer. Yes, I know you sell to lots of different people, but it is really a lot easier to write blog posts or outline a video or pick the right picture if you can think about the fact that you're trying to get the attention of one person. Who is your typical client? And these are a couple of different examples of what a persona could look like. This is a really nice one for a shoe company. You've got a little bit of gender and where she lives. things that are important to her. What are her goals, not just when it comes to buying your product, but in general. And I like this, when they were building this brand persona for Monroe, they actually got some quotes from individual clients who fit this profile to help make her come alive and be more real. This is another one for more of a sporting goods manufacturer. Again, you'll notice the personas always have a person. There's always an image of someone in the picture. I kind of like how they kind of give you some graphs there to kind of show you some of the things he's interested in, and also some of his other favorite apps. I also like the way they set this here. Pain points and goals. What are the things that he's frustrated by, and then how do you help? This one is also another nice layout. Again, it's a little bit more graphical, more bar charts, more kind of a picture of who he is at a glance. But in all of these, you can see there are very different people. He's a little bit more blue collar. He's a little bit more active and probably a little bit younger. And even on business to business, you can have something like this, where you're looking at, if you're selling into a company, are you selling to the secretary or the CEO? Is it the plant manager or the building supervisor? Who they are, what kind of jobs do they hold, what kind of positions. All of these things help you build a picture of who you're talking to. All of these persona elements help you think about what it is that you do. What's your position statement? How do you solve the problem of that target customer? And what makes you uniquely qualified? What are the key benefits of your product, and how do they line up with the pain points? What are the common questions that that customer is likely to have, and how do they take the next step? As you're thinking about content, and this is across the board, video, podcast, blog posts, images, think about, what does your audience care about? Think about what you want to be known for and what you want to talk about, and that overlap, that sweet yellow spot in the middle, is your content core, and that's where you're going to have the best results. That's where you're going to be valuable and relevant. That's where you're going to establish yourself as someone that people want to pay attention to. And your valuable and relevant content can come in a ton of different forms. Blog posts, images, podcasts, little social media shares, ads on social media, polls and quizzes and contests, really all sorts of things. So where do you get your content ideas? Honestly, they're everywhere. One of the best things to do is to sit down and take a look at what you already have. Look at all of the blog posts and white papers and sales brochures and sales sheets and flyers you've already created. Go through and create an organized inventory, and then go back and really look at the stuff and figure out what's good the way it is, what needs to be updated. You know, my company, Roundpeg, we've been around for 16 years. And in the last 16 years, I've written lots of articles and workbooks and taught a number of different seminars. And so anytime I get ready to start something new, I kind of go back through my library and see, well, what do I have that's useful? What do I have that I can build on? Listen to your constituents. Listen to your customers. Listen to your employees. Listen to your competitors. Look at the kind of information they're sharing and make notes. And keep a running list of frequently asked questions. One of the best blog posts that we ever did was based on a question that we kept getting over and over again. And that question was, why do I need hosting and a web design and a domain name? And I finally came up with a way to answer that question in a way that made sense. I explained to people that we built websites which were essentially like a mobile home. They were pretty and had lots of features, but they wouldn't be any fun to live in if there wasn't running water and electricity. And for a website, it is the hosting company that provides the running water and the electricity. That made it so much easier. Every time people asked that question, I could send them a link to that blog post, and when they were searching online at 2 in the morning and asking that question, they could find my blog post even though I was sound asleep. The other thing to kind of keep an eye on are industry trends and regulations and things that are changing in your community. Stay informed. If you're going to be generating content, you can't do it with your head in the sand. You need to be reading the news. You need to be reading blogs and social media. You may even want to use Google Alerts to help you stay one step ahead, and subscribe to emails developed by some of your competitors. See what they're writing about. Okay, so now you've got all of your ideas. Where do you start? I'm going to tell you that you have to start with your blog. Everything else will build off what you put in your blog. Your blog is ground zero. And so your blog posts should have text and pictures. They can be long or short articles. Now, they probably need to be a little bit longer if you really want them to be effective. They may include video or audio files. Why do I say that your blog is ground zero? Because once you create the information here, you can share it in any number of ways. You can share a link from a newsletter. You can share a link on an industry forum. You can share information on social media. And after each of those shares, people will be driven back to your blog where they can learn more about who you are and what you do. Basics on blogging. These days, they really need to be a minimum of 500 words. Anything less than about 500 words, Google considers thin content. And there's just not enough information, enough meat in that blog post to really answer questions from either your customers or search engines. I always suggest that you keep your blog posts, even though you're trying to go long, keep them focused on one keyword or topic. It doesn't mean you repeat that keyword 20 different times in your article, but it means that there's a single theme that the article is really about. At the bottom of the blog post, there should be always, always, always a clear next step. Where do I go next? What do I do now? Where can I read more? Fill out a form to contact you, download some information, something. And also, as you're developing your blog post, remember the featured image, because when you share that blog post on social media, you're going to need the image. And make sure you write a good title and meta description, because that is what search engines are going to hang on to. And so there you've got it. There's your blog post. And when you share it in social media, you're going to pull up the picture and that little bit of description, your headline and your meta description. And that's really what gets people's attention and makes them say, oh, I want to read that. And, you know, when you've been blogging for a long time, sometimes you think, oh my God, I've written about this so many times. One of the best things that you can do is create what's called a Roundup post. And in a Roundup post, you collect a series of articles that are related to the same topic. And you give people a reason, maybe a little summary of each of the articles, a quick introduction. What these Roundup posts do, they are the gift that keeps on giving. Number one, it creates some good links. And in a Roundup post, you don't have to link just to your content. You can include 1 or 2 blog posts by other people that you like, kind of creating that social sharing, sending traffic to them and attracting their attention so maybe they come back to you. But it also allows you to sort of dive into your content library and reuse some of your older content. It gives you a reason to revisit that old content and maybe refresh it. And every time you do that and you resave that blog post, you're going to ping Google, and Google is going to come back and look at it again. These Roundup posts also help you build more authority on a single topic, because now you've got a lot more content all built into one article, and every now and then it gives you a creative break, because if you are blogging regularly, sometimes you just need to take a break, not worry about a new topic, and just sort of catch your breath. And I love the Roundups for that as well. Okay. Something else that you can do with blogs, and this is sort of that next step beyond just the Roundup post, is something called a collection. And here, maybe you pull longer segments from a series of different blogs to build some kind of white paper or download. We found that these are extremely strong for our food clients because we build a collection of recipes. Now, you can do a lot of things and make this very complicated, but honestly, we use a simple Word document, we lay it out, we add an attractive cover, and we save it as a PDF. And now, if you want this recipe collection, you have to give me your email to get it. Very simple. It is a powerful way to collect a lot of content on the same subject, really demonstrate your expertise, and grow your email list, moving people through to the next step. Now, all of these blogs are on my website, so why would someone give me their email to get the collection? It's efficient, it's easy, and you've made it really convenient. And in addition to collections of blog posts and articles, think about creating some lead magnet tools. Again, building off maybe an article that you wrote about. Looking at these tools, I'm guessing they laid this out either in Excel and Microsoft Word and just put a pretty header on the top. Maybe you write a blog post about how to use this activity log, and then you have an offer to download a blank version at the end of the post. Or you can do something a little bit more attractive with a sell sheet and maybe actually hire a designer to do a little more laying out for you. But you don't really have to. The trick with lead magnet tools is simply to offer something to a prospective customer that they will trade their email address for. And again, using your blog as the starting point and the first place that you promote these tools ties all the pieces together. Now, one of the things that I did say was that all of your blog posts need images. And that's because, number one, they look better in your blog roll, but number two, as you promote your content on other platforms, Facebook, if you don't have an image, no one will really notice or pay attention. Twitter, LinkedIn, the same thing. It is that image that stops people in the timeline and gets them to notice you. And images are content too. 63% of all Google image searches and search clicks result in web traffic. 27% of all search is image search. And so, number one, you need to have the great images, but number two, you then need to also optimize those images. When you're working with photos, be sure to choose the right size for wherever you're sharing it. If you're going to be sharing it online, 72 dots per inch. Don't upload 300 dot per inch images they will really slow down your website and also slow down how they load to other social sites. Avoid copyright issues. Just because an image is somewhere else on the internet does not mean you can use it. And I have had way too many clients burned because they selected an image that was online that they thought they could use and they couldn't. My recommendation is, whenever possible, use your own photos. They will be unique, they will be distinctive for you. They may not be as perfect or as polished, but they are yours. And one of the reasons that I say that is, when you select a stock image, the challenge is you don't know who else is using that image. You don't know what other associations exist around that image. And kind of one of my funny stories is, there was a church that was running a Valentine's Day dance, and they pulled a cute little stock image, some clip art of a Cupid for their Valentine's Day dance, and they handed out the flyers on Sunday. And as everybody was leaving the church with their flyers in hand, they noticed that the local strip club about a block away was also handing out flyers for their Valentine's Day program using the same image. That doesn't happen when you use original images. If you need to do stock photos, and there are times that you have to have a stock photo, invest in good ones. There are some great sites. Big Stock is pretty affordable, stockvault.net, and there is a freeimages.com that you can get images. If possible, try to customize them. Try to get into Photoshop and maybe add a little text or do something that makes that image more unique for you. And avoid the cheesy stock photos. There is no place in your business, on your website, or in a blog post for a handshake. Not the single desperate handshake, the two-hand handshake, the colored, I can't tell who these people are, or the desperate, really holding on handshake. Unless, of course, you're selling cufflinks or rings, leave the handshake images behind. They're cliche and overused, as are the mysterious writing on the wall images. This woman has been writing on walls all over America. Somebody needs to take her pen away from her. And the cheesy images of the plant. Unless you're running a nursery and selling plants, do not do this. And especially not this one, because everybody knows that if you pull the plant out of the ground, it's going to die. And finally, the staff meetings with people who don't work for you. The perfectly balanced, ethnically appropriate image where everyone is smiling and looking in the camera, because that's what we always do, right? And of course, we're sitting around at a meeting with blank sheets of paper. Get a picture of your employees. Have them dress a little nicer, but have real people whenever possible. I get it. There are times that you have to use stock images. If you're using stock images of people, go for the more interesting photos, the less than perfect people, the people that are not looking directly at the camera. They're always more interesting because it sort of pulls you into the photo as you wonder what it is they're looking at. And I talked earlier about optimizing images. This is actually a picture I took at the St. Louis Zoo. And you'll notice that I'm adding alternative text. Gorilla at St. Louis Zoo. Why? Because that way, if somebody goes to Google and searches for gorilla or St. Louis Zoo, there's a chance that my picture will come up. Okay, so we've got blog posts, we've got images, podcasts, and video. This is where content is going, folks. It is definitely going multimedia. What is a podcast? It is a downloadable, long-form audio or video posted online for listening on a device and time at your choosing. The cool thing about podcasts is that people are listening to them on the go. They're listening to them as they're walking down the street. They're listening to them as they are riding in their car, working on something else. And it is media that they can consume on their timeline. I actually listen to a lot of podcasts from National Public Radio, but I don't listen to them on radio because I never have the time to stop what I'm doing when the show is on the air. So I really appreciate the fact that I can consume all that information on my schedule. Some things that you need to think about if you're going to create podcasts. They are episodic. So you have a series of episodes, and you can either do it as a story that builds or a series of interviews or shows around different themes. They need to be downloadable. I need to be able to pull them from the internet to my computer, or more likely to my cell phone. They usually have a program orientation, and there's a featured host or theme, and they are set up for automatic distribution so that if somebody likes my podcast, they can listen to a single episode, or they can go to iTunes or Spotify or Google Play or wherever they listen to podcasts and get my podcast. Basic podcast stats. Is this something you should be thinking about? In 2017, 67 million Americans listen to podcasts every month. And 42 million are listening to podcasts on a weekly basis. That's an awful lot of people consuming an awful lot of audio content. And when you look at it by age, you see that, yes, younger consumers are more likely to listen than people over 55. But even in that category, you see it growing. You see year by year, more and more people are listening to podcasts. And so it is a great way to distribute information in a slightly different format. Particularly if you're not a writer, being able to record an audio file and let people listen to you talk can be very valuable. If you're going to get started, there are a couple things you should think about. Number one, get a good microphone and a quiet place to record. Now, we actually have discovered that we can do a pretty good job with on-the-spot interviews just off our iPhone, but we usually have to do a little bit more cleanup in audio to get rid of some of the background noise. But it is really important to have a nice quiet place to do your recording. You want to plan out what your show is about, and you want to think about the flow of the program, because the more planning you do, the less cleanup you're going to have in the audio phase. If you're going to do a podcast, learn some basic audio editing skills, some software that's available. There's lots of software that's available. Audacity and Lame, that they work in tandem, are actually free. Adobe Audition is actually part of the Adobe suite. It's a little bit more complicated. Really and truly, it is not hard to edit a podcast. But if you're going to podcast, make sure you have an editing step. No matter how good you think it went, there are always the extra ums and ers and spaces, and creating and recording the podcast in advance and then cleaning it up to really make it easy for someone and enjoyable for a listener. You don't want to skip this step. And then once you've recorded your podcast, you're going to have to host and distribute it somewhere. You can host the episodes on your website, but then you miss the automatic distribution and publishing to important podcast sites like iTunes and Google Play. Two of the most popular hosting and distribution platforms are Libsyn and Podbean. As we look at the two tools, what we felt was that for most of our small business clients who are really just getting started, Podbean is a much easier solution. Libsyn is a little more sophisticated. There's a little bit more you can do with how your podcast looks and feels and how you distribute it and embed it in your site, but it is a little bit more difficult to work with. So I would probably suggest starting with Podbean and kind of pushing the limits on that. We have over 300 episodes on Podbean. It feeds directly to YouTube, to Spotify, to Google Play, to Stitcher. I'm not going to make any changes anytime soon. And by the way, if you're interested in looking for our podcast, it's called More Than a Few Words. Create a recognizable image as part of your podcast. So when people are looking at a string of podcasts, you want something that sort of jumps out and is noticeable and draws your eye and attracts your attention. Well, I think this is nice. I think this orange and yellow with the word bite is a lot more attractive. I look at that before I look at the tone on tone. Okay, thinking about video. Why video? We're seeing mobile video consumption increasing by 100% every year. That's according to YouTube. And we know that social media videos get literally 12,000% more shares than text and images combined. If you're going to do video as part of your content strategy, for the most part, keep it short. What you see, this is Wistia. They're a video production company, and you're seeing how quickly people fall off and lose interest in a video. Even if it's less than a minute, only 60% of your viewers are going to stay with you for the whole thing. If you have a longer video in that 45 to 60 minutes, by the time you're done, only 20% of your viewers are still with you. Now, I had another video production company tell me that on social media, videos or on your website, short videos work that are teasers that just kind of are designed to get people's attention. But if you're doing a how-to series and you're really diving in on detail, you actually want longer videos, because if people are looking for real information and not fluff, they actually will commit to the longer videos. And you have lots of options. Now, you can go the professional route and you can hire a production company to shoot a 1 or 2 minute video, and you're probably going to spend several $1,000s. If you go that route, make sure you have a very specific purpose for the video and lots of ideas on how you are going to use the video once it's produced. There are also some other more affordable ways for small businesses to get into the video game. The first is using what's called stock video, and then of course Facebook Live. With stock video, you actually, like a stock photo, will buy a clip of video. And an individual video clip on something like Getty Images might run $60 or $70. It's not really very expensive, but the video tends to be really high quality, and then all you have to do is overlay a little text. Here's an example of a 15-second video using stock video. So what you got there is, it's a very cute little video, and it was perfect for our flooring client. It was a great introduction to a story about waterproof flooring. So as you're thinking about video and maybe wanting to up your game a little bit, stock video is a nice interim step. And of course, you can do Facebook Live. Facebook is certainly encouraging people to take more and more advantage of this, and I think it works really well. People like to watch a little bit of what you're doing. But if you do, here are a couple of things to keep in mind. Before you broadcast, go ahead and promote. Let people know you're going to be live in the next 15 or 20 minutes. And prepare and practice. Just because it's live doesn't mean it needs to be sloppy. A quick reminder to set your phone in airplane mode so that you don't get an incoming call in the middle of your video. And more than the other types of video, if you're going to do Facebook Live, make it personal and fun. Facebook is a lot like a backyard barbecue, and your video really should fit in that fun kind of environment. And then optimize the recording. Save it to the timeline. Write a description, because you actually will get more interaction and views on your video after it's done running live. And analyze your results. Take advantage of the metrics on Facebook. And if you're loading video to YouTube, take advantage of those metrics as well to make better decisions about different kinds of video next time. And some days it just feels like all of this is too much, that there's just not enough time to create all of the information and all of the content that you need to answer all of the questions that your customers have. And that's where other people's content comes in. And now when I say other people's content, I'm not referring to getting out there and scraping content off the internet, but really soliciting information from your customers, your suppliers, and maybe your peers. We trust other people, and some of the most common types of user-generated content are reviews. These days, if you're going on vacation or buying a big appliance, before you buy, you're going to go to one of these review sites. You're going to want to see what other travelers thought of that restaurant or that cool hotel or that toaster oven that you're thinking about buying. And the statistics are pretty staggering. 68% of leisure travelers research online and look at the reviews before they make decisions. 85% of consumers are more likely to spend when online recommendations support what they're hearing from friends. And a 1-star increase in Yelp can lead to a 5 to 9% increase in revenue. So soliciting reviews and having a strategy to solicit reviews and get those testimonials, not only on the review sites, but also adding them to your website. A second thing that you can do is something called crowdsourcing. And this is where you actually ask people to send you content. Maybe it's an answer to a question, maybe it's a photograph, maybe it's a photo through some kind of contest. But there are really some wonderful and compelling reasons to do this. The first is that crowdsourcing gives you a level of authenticity that you can't fake. You have an opportunity to leverage the wisdom of the crowd. You generate ideas you would never have had on your own, and it gives you that social media engagement. So let's take a look at each of these. Authenticity you can't fake. When the book The Fault of Our Stars was made into a movie, it is the story of a young girl dying of cancer. She's a 16-year-old teenage girl. And for the trailer for the movie, it's a little bit of a slow movie, and they really wanted to pull the audience in and get them to care about these characters. And so rather than showing clips of the actors, what they did is they actually posted on social media and asked people to send photos and videos and scraps of notes about what they think about the book, about how they feel as a 16-year-old girl. And almost the entire trailer were these images of things that were sent in by people who had read the book and loved it. And there was something so authentic and so real. And quite honestly, no 35-year-old male movie producer in California could fake that. There's no way he could get inside the head of a 16-year-old girl. And so letting 16-year-old girls send them content gave them something that just felt so real and was so riveting. This idea of the wisdom of the crowd is kind of funny because the internet makes it easier, but actually this goes back to the days of Aristotle. It is this idea that large groups of people are collectively smarter than individuals, even when they're experts in particular fields when it comes to problem solving, decision making, innovating, predicting. You may have seen these contests where there's a jar of jelly beans. And if I guess or you guess, odds are we're going to be wrong. But if you get 100 people to guess and you average our answers, we'll be pretty close. And if you get 1,000 people to guess and you average our answers, we'll be closer still. And this is one of the things that you can do with your online marketing. You can reach out to the internet and ask people to send you information. One of my favorite strategies is something I call the Roundup or the group post. I belong to a lot of organizations, and I'll send a note to half a dozen other subject matter experts. I will ask them a question, and I will share their results. The benefit, not only are these people happy because I featured them, but I have these great external links because everybody that I include in the post is likely to share this article to their community. It gives me fresh ideas and maybe things I wouldn't have thought about before, and it really compounds social reach. And so every now and then, if you're just running on empty and you just don't know what else to write about, put a question out there and see what comes back. You get ideas you maybe never would have had. This is one of my favorite examples. Lay's Potato Chips runs a contest every year where they ask people to send them an idea for a new flavor of potato chip. In a million years, I'm not sure they would have thought about Southern biscuits and gravy, but that potato chip flavor won. And even you see people like Jimmy Fallon using this wisdom of the crowd and crowdsourcing as a way of generating two things. Number one, ideas for his monologue, but also interaction on social media. He sent out a tweet and asked people to tweet something funny, weird, or embarrassing that happened at a birthday party. And because he's already got a following, lots of people responded, and he can pick some of the answers and actually share them in his monologue that evening. He got great engagement in social media, he got great ideas for his monologue, and because he took the time to say thank you and even used some of the content, people are likely to play with him again and again. Once you've created all of this content, you need to think about distributing it. It has to go beyond just your blog. One of the great places is social media. Customers are social, and 30% of users say they prefer to contact brands through social media rather than the phone. And the younger your audience, the higher that number. So develop a plan to reach customers where they are. Now, I'm not really going to talk a lot about email newsletters in this presentation, but I will tell you that that needs to be an important part of your content distribution plan. Social media is great. It's wonderful. But social media, when you're on social media platforms, you're competing with hundreds of other people all creating content, throwing it out there, hoping that somebody will notice. When you have a permission-based email list, I have your undivided attention, and there's power in that. And reaching customers where they are does not mean trying to be everywhere. This is a quote from a company called Copyblogger, and they are one of the leading blogging and social media firms, and I have followed them for years. And a few years ago, they did something that was absolutely stunning. They made an announcement that they were actually going to delete their Facebook fan page. Now, they had close to 30,000 people that they were connected to on Facebook. And so on the surface, it sounded crazy. But what they said in the articles that they wrote about this decision was that they had their Facebook page and they were working really hard to create engagement there, and it just wasn't happening. That their readers and their users and the people who were more likely to interact with them were on Twitter, and that's where they were going. It's not our job to tell our audience where we live. It's to grow communities where they live. And so embrace that. As you're building your content distribution strategy, go back to your persona and ask yourself, where are your customers, and get there. And create this virtuous cycle. Remember, social media drives people to your website, to your email list, but it is your website and your email that will convert in the long run, because that's where you have an opportunity to really focus your customers' undivided attention. And create a plan for repurposing your content. It's not that you're going to have totally unrelated and new stuff everywhere. You're going to have a newsletter or a blog post. You're going to have a picture and an article, and you can use that same picture on Facebook or on Instagram. You'll have different messaging. You may have more details or less details, but your content can live and live and live. And think about this strategically. This is not a scattershot, oh, I'm going to do this here and this today and this today. Organize your ideas. Have a plan. Create themes for weeks or months. And think about that theme and all the different pieces. For example, we work with a flooring company, and January is warm and cozy at home. We're going to have lots of images of people sitting around playing games with family members bundled up, some nice fireplaces, throw rugs on the floor. April is all about rain and waterproof flooring, and we're going to have pictures of kids coming in and out and muddy footprints. Think about what pictures you're going to need, what video, what podcasts, what are you going to talk about, what kind of content, and bundle it. The more you have that kind of collection feel, you're not boring your constituents, because the truth is they're not paying as close attention as you are. And right about the time you think, I'm sick of this, I don't want to see another piece of content about this, that's the moment your customers finally start noticing. And measure it. This chart is from our 2018 Internet Marketing Study. And we ask businesses what they measure. And I was really disappointed when I looked at the yellow bar, which was 2018, and the teal bar, the yellow bar is 2012, and the teal bar is 2018, that across the board, customers are doing less measuring than in years past. That's disappointing, because I think marketing is measurable and you need to be spending your time on the things that work. But pick something. In my mind, the most beneficial measures are some of the ones here that are kind of in the middle. Landing page views and conversions, because this tells you if the activity that you're doing on social media or in your newsletter is driving people to action. On the other side, it is harder to connect leads and sales sometimes to these specific middle actions, but pick several metrics and stay with it and hold your marketing accountable. And then look for clues in your content about what other content you should be creating. Go back and look at which blog posts are the most popular, that get the most visits, that get the most shares, and then start creating. Questions? If you have questions about your content marketing strategy, please reach out to us at Roundpeg. We are at roundpeg.biz. We would love to hear from you.